Today, we're talking about why combining middle school and high school could be hurting your youth ministry and your church overall.
Welcome to the Ministry Coach Podcast, where every week we give you actionable and practical steps to help you amplify the impact in your youth ministry. My name is Jeff Lascola. This is
Kristen Lascola.
And if you guys get value out of this episode, make sure you like and subscribe. This one is going to be a little touchy in the sense that I feel like it's going to hit right to the heart of a lot of youth ministries across this country. In that, we're going to talk about the combining of 6th through 12th grade, middle school through high school.
Yep. And we've never done a whole episode on this, and I feel like it's time because this is probably one of the biggest questions we get. And I feel like I've sort of like dripped my opinion in over the course of a few episodes. Yeah. And so some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, it may ring a little bell like, wait, I've heard them say that before. But this question came from a listener who reached out and said, here's what's going on. We have to combine middle school and high school for a season. Can you tell me the best practices for how to do that? Yeah. And she's like, maybe you can make it an episode. I thought, yeah, that's a great idea because we are getting a lot of questions and it's just time to address it all in one little package, one episode. But yeah, you're right. I don't know that everyone's going to love my answer to this. And that's totally fine because this is only my opinion. You can go and glean what you want, leave what you don't, or maybe just go prove me wrong, and then let me know how it's going. But here's what my opinion is based off of. So before we dive in, my opinion on this matter is based on my observation, my experience, and my knowledge, like experiential knowledge from what I've seen over like the last 18 years of doing youth ministry. And based on all of that, I've put it together and it lives in a little file folder in my brain. And it just is like my feeling about it that I have a very hard time changing. So here's my belief. Are you ready?
I feel like there's a drum roll that needs to happen. This is a really
the reason
build up.
It's because almost every single one of our listeners, I feel like combines middle school and high school.
That's very popular to do.
It is. And that's why I cringe having to be the bearer of bad news because I know it's like so many people are in this position of they are the student ministry pastor and they do junior high, high school. They pick one night of the week. They do them both. And here's what I would say. I cannot tell you best practices except don't do it. That is my best practice opinion.
See you guys. Thanks for watching.
Here's my belief. My belief is that middle school and high school together is never ever ideal. And I'm sure people would agree with that. That is not ideal.
Ideal being the key word.
Right. But going a little bit further, I would never do it. Would never. And I would always find another way, no matter what. So there is a choice here. I think sometimes youth pastors are like, no, there is no choice. This is what we're doing. And I'll get into that a little more at the end. I think there always is a choice because I put myself in their position and I just know I would never do it. I would find another way, but it depends on you and what you're willing to do. So again, we're going to get into that at the end because there will be roadblocks, there will be challenges, there will be hurdles to overcome that make it difficult, but it is not impossible to split junior high and high school. It's not impossible. Might be difficult for your context because I'm sure you're thinking, well, if I could, I already would have. Right. Like, I'm sure everyone here wants to just lead one ministry. And I get that, but there still is a choice. It just depends on what you're willing to do. So let me first tell you why it's a bad idea. I have a few reasons why it's not ideal. And I think it's always a bad idea to combine junior high and high school. So number one, I believe that you cannot be excellent when you combine. You can't be excellent at a combined both ministry. And I'm going to start with this because yes, it can be done, but is it excellent? Like, that's the question. And I think over like the last maybe 6 years, excellence has become a priority to me, almost to the point where I'm like, well, if I can't excel at it, I don't want to do it, because I kind of live my life by the motto, if it's
worth being done, it's worth being done well.
Anything worth doing is worth doing well. There it is. It's a motto, but I don't even know it. Anything worth doing is worth doing well. And I just don't like the question of excellence. I don't know. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen, I don't even want to say this, but I cannot recall a student ministry I've seen that combined junior high and high school that was excellent. It was good.
Okay.
And students came and there was fruit in the ministry stuff happening, but was it excellent? I don't know. Have never seen one, but.
So explain what is the lack of excellence coming from?
So the lack of excellence, is like middle schoolers and high schoolers. It's no secret. They need vastly different things. Middle school, even when it comes to just like their energy and what they want to do with that energy, I feel like to create an excellent junior high ministry, you meet them right where they're at in that energy and you channel it into everything you do. Your games, your worship, your message, everything should scream junior high. This is made for junior hires because these are both crucial ages. Like adults, you think about adults, it's like, well, adults from 21 to 81 are all in the same group. Yes, but the high need of an adult is not the same as a high need of an adolescent. They're at a very critical age where like, they say like statistics show like if people are going to accept Jesus, it's usually like right within that age, like between 12 to 15. Like, and that's like when they're going to say yes to Jesus for the rest of their life. And then there's all the like puberty and like hormones and all these like highly like developmental stages, like development on steroids, where adults kind of plateau development wise. And so you can speak to a larger crowd of adults and they can filter it for their own context. But junior hires and high schoolers, what they need and where they're at are so different. Like think about even like most of my none of my sixth graders have phones, maybe like one or two. A few of my seventh graders have phones. Most of the eighth graders have phones. I'm sure all of your high schoolers have phones.
Right.
And so that right there is like this huge gap in like, just because they have a phone, yes, that is a huge difference because now what they're opening themselves up to and the temptation and the way that you give age appropriate illustrations. Like I spoke at our high school group last week and what I felt like I could talk about was so different than what I would say to junior hires because of the specific challenges they're facing. And so addressing an 11-year-old and an 18-year-old in one message, I feel like, what's that saying? Like you cast your net wide and don't catch anything. I think I just made that up. But it's like that thing of like if you're trying to be good at everything, you're good at nothing. That's it.
Okay.
Nothing to do with fish. I don't know where that came from. But if you try to be good at everything, you're good at nothing. And I feel like if you're trying to be good at hitting an 11-year-old and an 18-year-old who's about to leave home and go to college, like
you have a kid who could potentially have a full beard sitting next to a kid who has not even come close to puberty yet. That's a big difference. And so what's going on in their lives.
How many years is that? 9?
7.
Okay, whatever. So 7 years. That's the age difference between me and you. But you and I'm
7 years younger. And nobody knows that.
But you and I sit in a message together and you're like, awesome.
The younger you get. So if you had a 90-year-old and a 97-year-old, you'd be like,
exactly.
You guys are both going to die any day now. But if you had a newborn and age 7, big different, needs.
And that's the same.
And it's not that far off from 11 to 18.
And that's what I mean. Like the development is like accelerated at this time and there's just no way to be excellent. And that's what I'm saying. You can't be excellent for an 11-year-old and excellent for an 18-year-old all at the same time and everything in between. Your messages will be so different. The energy alone. I went to our high school group and I'm like, man, I feel like I could just go night night after this. Like it was so relaxing. It was like, whereas when I get home from junior high, I feel like I have like a ministry hangover on Wednesday morning because it's like, like still buzzing in my head. You know, things are so like crazy because they have so much energy. They want to run around. They want to party. They want to have fun. They want to do hand motions during worship. So that's a big reason is the developmental gap. We can't be excellent at both. So, and keeping those messages age appropriate. If you've got one, I'd love to hear it because that is really hard.
Yeah, I guess that's the hard thing is you could get a good message. It more than likely is not going to be age appropriate. It's going to have to be a really 30,000 foot view.
Yeah.
And not really like
you can't
specific,
hone in on like, I mean, even think with high schoolers are like getting into the dating scene. And that's like one of their biggest things is like attraction to the opposite sex. Now my 8th graders, some of them are dating, but a 6th and 7th grader, like they're like, ew, you know, or they giggle like anytime, like.
To be honest though, there's even a huge station. I don't know if station is life is what you'd call it, but between a 14-year-old freshman and an 18-year-old senior.
Totally. And that's why
big difference.
One of our campuses is so large, they have the staff to do this. They divide their high school into 2 ministries, 9 and 10, 11 and 12, because they're looking at this the same way we're talking about it tonight is like, so I have to minister to a freshman and a senior. Those stations in life are so different. So they have 2 high school pastors, one for 9, 10, one for 11, 12.
You're leaving for college, big life change.
Right.
You can't even drive yet. You know, it's like that's a huge
and
difference.
They're still missing junior high. They want to go back because they're like, that was when it was really fun. So anyways, that even what they're insecure about, all kinds of stuff. Okay. Also, another reason why I don't prefer the combination is the growth aspect. I feel like you will never grow. You might grow a little bit, because maybe some of you are thinking, but we have grown. Right. Ever since we started listening to your podcast, Kristen, we have grown. But you might grow a little bit, but here's the caveat with that. You'll hit your ceiling faster. So even if you do grow, your ceiling will be lower than it would be if you were split. Or
you could even say the growth you've had is not as quick and as I'm actually saying the exact same thing you're saying, but yeah, you're hitting that growth slower than you would.
You're learning. Good job.
Wait, no, let me say it a different way. So if you grow, it's just
you're 7 years older than me. You're just winding down.
I know my legacy years. The growth that you're experiencing, it could have been faster.
Yeah, and again, I know some people are probably like wanting to yell at their phone, like, I don't want to combine. I know they don't want to. But here's why you won't grow is high schoolers
want to be with high schoolers.
Do not want to hang out with middle schoolers. Middle schoolers, like we were watching Diary of a Wimpy Kid 2 and remember Greg and Rowley were like so excited to go to a high school party and they were like taking pictures. But Roderick was like, oh my gosh, like don't say a word, get out of here. I'm going to lock you in the basement because high schoolers are embarrassed by junior hires. They don't want them around. They don't think they're cool. They don't think they're cute. They don't think they're funny. And when my high schoolers come back, sometimes like I'll let juniors and seniors start like co-leading small groups. They'll like their first few weeks are like, were we this like
annoying, bad,
no,
disrespectful?
Kristen, there is no way. There is no way we were like this. I'm like, truth hurts, doesn't it? But because I'm like, yes, nobody's changed in the last 18 years.
So on the one end of the spectrum, you have high schoolers that are saying, I don't want to be in a group, a small group, or even a large group with kids who are 11, 12, middle school age. Then you peel that next layer of the onion back, you have the parents of the middle schoolers saying, I don't want my 11-year-old daughter hanging out with 18-year-old boys.
I don't.
And I'm like, it's not going to happen.
I don't even want our 8-year-old daughter hanging out with 11-year-olds. Like sometimes she'll get in the car and come to the beach with us. And I don't think
at
thing
a junior
of
high
it.
Event.
Yeah, like I'm taking my junior hires to the beach. I'll bring my daughter along, and the things they're talking about. If she weren't in the car, I wouldn't even think twice about it. But then when she's in the car and they're like, "Oh
just
my
age
gosh,
appropriate
that
stuff.
girl's hot," and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm cringing right now because it's not age appropriate.
Yeah.
And it's, you hit the nail on the head. It's the same thing. Like parents shouldn't be okay with their, especially 8th grade daughters with like junior and senior boys.
Yeah. Now I'm and maybe this is jumping the gun on this point. I know a lot of people that are really pro middle school through high school say, well, we love it because the older students, juniors and seniors, or maybe just seniors, can like mentor the younger ones. And my feeling on that is you've taken away a place where those students, talking about the seniors, can go and own it as their own, to go and be fed. And you're putting them in a position to serve, which is not a bad thing. But imagine that same concept with a middle school ministry and a high school ministry, same juniors or seniors can come and help on a night that is not dedicated to them.
They need to have their program, and then it's, like you said, then they can come serve.
Same mentoring role, same service, you know, they're getting that experience, which is awesome, but it's not at the sacrifice of being fed. And I think that is so critical, because even when there's kids like that are in junior high that don't ever come to the junior high service because they're always in the kids ministry helping out with kids, it's like you're really missing out on being fed. It's great that you're serving,
right? And they usually will attend one or the other service.
Okay,
you know, like they'll come to first.
That used to not be the case.
No,
though.
They do. They're pretty good at it now because we've adjusted that. But I mean, what you're saying, it's basically is a junior high youth group. You know what I mean? Like, so if the high schoolers are just mentoring the younger kids.
It's like, where are the high schoolers going? Where's the high school group? It is
a junior high group.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and you will get those high schoolers that are into it and that aren't, because you might be thinking like, our high schoolers don't mind at all. They love hanging out with middle schoolers. Right. Again, think about growth though. And you're going to reach the people that are already there and maybe a few friends along the way, and you will see a slight increase, but you're not going to reach like the unchurched kid or a bunch of like students out in the community that are just kind of more the like come and see type of people. Like, I just feel like that first impression of I walked in the door and there was a bunch of little kids running around and like pantsing each other, like I just think it's that first impression. You're probably not going to have a ton of retention or a ton of visitors. It's going to be, everyone's going to be homegrown that comes up. Like, you're not going to be an attractional ministry, like, meaning that's gotten a bad rap. You're not supposed to say attractional ministry, a magnetic,
there you go,
ministry. But again, your ceiling is a lot
limited.
Lower. So here's what a lot of people tell me: we have to combine, because we're small, or is it we're small because we combine?
Ooh.
I'm just saying, here is what I try so hard to get people to understand is if you treat your church like a small church, you will stay a small church.
Oh, say that again for the people in the back.
All right, here it is. If you treat your church like a small church, it will stay a small church. You've got to think bigger. You have to think like a big church if you want to grow. If you want to be a big church, put in the structure to support growth. Because it's like, what is the problem? It's like, oh, we don't have a lot of kids. It makes sense to combine. I don't know. Like, you'll never know.
Yeah.
So if you split and you try it and you see if it grows after a couple of years, I mean,
and that's key. Because
I know,
at first I thought you were going to say a couple
years.
of weeks and be like, that's not enough. Yeah, years.
It'll take years. And that's the thing. What do we say? Like, I feel like our mantra should be like Ministry Coach Podcast, in it for the long view or something, because we're always talking about you have to take the long view of ministry. Like Craig Rochelle, like on his leadership podcast, he keeps saying like, you don't see, like, you just see the end result of these ministries and you're like, I want to be that. But you don't see the
blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, the consistent day after day, that hard work that have to like keep going, to keep at it, to finally arrive. And he says it could take you years to get where you want to be in leadership. But why do we give up? Is because we don't see immediate results. So you can't just split and say, oh, see, we tried it didn't work. It's like, no, because you have to shift that culture and that's going to take a long time. You have to build that critical mass and that's going to take I mean, you're going to have to go through maybe even a couple graduating, not full classes, but I would assume like you would know a little bit after 2 years as if this is working. So if you're willing to put in the time and, that patience of like, why does it look like nobody's here? But I mean, you're going to have to do it sometime, or just you're going to have a low ceiling forever.
Right.
I mean, that's the hard part.
What do you think about, because I think the thought is usually like, well, let's just keep growing. And then once we get big enough, we split. But you're saying you think it would be better to just be like,
yes,
let's rip that Band-Aid off and just start.
I cannot emphasize enough. I would never, ever, ever, never, ever, ever combine middle school and high school. I don't care if I had 2 middle schoolers and 3 high schoolers. We would split. We would never be together. And so size is not an issue as far as I'm concerned. That's not what we're talking about. It's not like little ministries need to be combined. No, because do small ministries still have middle schoolers and high schoolers that have vastly different needs? Yes. So better to have a small ministry that meets someone's needs than a little bit of a bigger ministry that is watered down meeting everybody's needs. Like It's just, to me, more of like what is important to you. And that's why in this next section, we're going to ask the question, what are you willing to do?
Yeah.
Because if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I just don't have the help or whatever. I mean, there's a million reasons why you cannot do it. Again, I'm telling you, I would find a way. But if you don't feel that strongly about it, you're going to continue to combine. And who knows, prove me wrong. I would love to know your success story.
And then let's get in. I think this is where we're heading right now, but it's one thing to point out problems, but it's another thing to present solutions.
Yes. And that's what leaders do. Leaders don't come with problems. Leaders come with solutions.
Right. So what do we have for solutions?
Here's what I would do. I'm just putting myself in like teleport into a church where I'm leading both and I don't want to be, but I feel stuck and I feel like I have no choice. Okay. Number 1, I would just ask, are we willing to hire somebody else?
Yeah.
And I would make my case of why I think this is unhealthy immediately and for the long term of our church. Are you willing to invest in the future of our church? Because these youth will be adults someday, and strong youth ministries, that's what fuels a growing church. Student ministries is a growth engine for a church. So you really have to do this. Like, are we willing to invest in our church's present and our church's future? Because if we don't have the proper staffing for that, we might just be like resigning to the ceiling on us, just like, hey, this is where we're gonna stay. We have to think future, right? So I would say, are we willing to hire another person, even part-time?
Yeah.
And I know some of you are part-time or some of you don't get paid at all,
right?
But can we bring someone else in?
That's all the more reason to bring somebody else in if they're not paying you anyways,
right?
Bring in another person you're not paying.
If you're doing this for free, bring in another free person. So if they say no, here's what I would ask next. So if you're my senior pastor and you say no, I would say, Pastor Jeff, what would it take for you to say yes? Where would we need to be? Where would student ministries need to be for this no to be a yes?
I think they would probably say, grow your current ministry and get to this point, and then you can split.
And then I would ask for a number. I'd say, what would that look like to you? Because we want to get into specifics of like, this cannot be a no forever.
Yeah.
Like if you and I are trying to grow this church, this is an absolute necessity. Someone's got to do junior high. Someone's got to do high school, or we're putting a ceiling on us. So tell me what I need to do to get you to say yes. And then I would work crazy hard to make that happen. I would make them say an actual number. When I get to 50 students, can I have, another person? When I get to 30 students,
Mother, may I have
a helper? And see what they say, and then don't let this be the last conversation.
Yeah.
So as you work hard and start growing your ministry and all of that, then you come back and say, hey, so since our last conversation a year ago, we've actually grown, and know your growth percentage rate. Like, we grew 10%. I just want to keep you updated. I'm really working toward that goal of getting another student ministry pastor. So after I've had that conversation, the second thing I would do is if my program is small, it's so small that I can maybe do both. And I would seriously consider that. Like maybe I do junior high Tuesday night and maybe I do high school Wednesday night. And some of you are like, oh, I could never. That's so much. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying for a season. I'm not saying forever. Maybe if you grow both of those, then you go back to the senior pastor and say, I have run. I mean, and P.S., we have pastors at our church that do that. TJ, he ran junior high and high school simultaneously on different nights. He did junior high Tuesday, and these were huge ministries, like 150 each, ran them both for a season. He's still doing it actually right now, but it's like, he knows it's not going to be forever. And we just got to get to a certain point, and then, you know, we're interviewing for that position, but
I think that's the key is, like you were saying before, you need to have clear communication where it's like, well, how large does this need to be for us to split? And if you're going that route and you're saying, well, let's split and grow, you probably also need to say, I will do this for this period of time or until it gets to this size, and we need to hire somebody.
But did you see how he didn't combine though? Like he didn't say, well, I'm just one guy. All right, high schoolers, we're going to start meeting on Tuesday, or we'll bring the junior hires. No, he's like, and that's what I mean. That's the culture of our church. We do under no circumstances combine. Well, how do you do it? You only have one guy. He did them both. Yeah. Like that's more of an option than combining, because why? It's going to kill your growth. It's going to kill your attendance. If for that season he had said, well, I'm only one guy, so we're going to combine till we hire somebody else, you killed it. You would have killed your ministry. And the person who wrote this question, she even admitted, she's like, we've been combining until we get into our building and our attendance is dying. And it sucks because you do all this hard work and then you watch it just like go down the drain because you had to combine. It's not good. It doesn't work. So can you do it for a season? Can you do both? I think I would. I honestly do. Or do you have a spouse that does ministry with you and you guys can divide and conquer? So a lot of people work with their spouse in youth ministry. They're like a package deal. So can you guys say, hey, you do junior high, I'll do high school, and I'll see you on Thursday night at home. Like, you know, and this is why I preface this is, what are you willing to do? Because if you're like, nope, and you're thinking of all the reasons why you can't do these things, then, you know, you prioritize what's going to be important. You don't have to do them. I'm just saying, what are you willing to do? Here's things I would do. Here's another idea. Can you raise up a team to lead one and you lead the other, or you alternate, you know, like, so say I'm primarily high school. Well, I raise up an intern or a leader or a super volunteer to take the majority of junior high, and they're pretty capable to run it. So say I do high school 3 weeks out of the month, and then on the 4th, I go and visit junior high and kind of support them and make sure everything's going well and have like a guest speaker for high school. So I'm at high school 75% of the time, junior high 25% of the time, but I have like a key, like rock solid kind of intern director person. Now, could I get them stipend and paid a little bit? That'd be incredible. I think we should pay people for their time. Churches are really bad at that, by the way. And then I just think we need to invest our money differently sometimes. But, you know, if you can't, you can't. But also, if they're just willing to volunteer and do it, you might get a different quality of work, but who knows? So that would be something I would look into if I were in that position.
A lot of these ministries we're talking about going back to what we said earlier, are probably combining because they are not large ministries. We have a total of 10 kids. That's middle school through high school. What a great time to split and let one of your leaders like
because
grow
it could
with
be
them.
Manageable. Yeah. And their leadership, I was talking to a pastor a couple weeks ago and he was saying, oh, well, you know, I can't lead, I can't lead a lot of kids. I said, yeah, but because you just started, I said, but your leadership will grow on pace with your ministry. So like and that's a great point. So these people,
it would be much harder to be like, hey, we're at 200. Let's split 100, and you're in charge. It's like,
getting people to be in charge of 5 junior hires, like totally
that's
doable.
Insane. Oh yeah.
Totally doable. So then if this is my very last choice, you're together, junior high and high school, we absolutely can't split. And you have a million reasons why, and there's no possible way, which I don't believe. I think there is. But if you have to stay together, the absolute worst case scenario is 100% together 100% of the time. That's the worst. Mm-hmm. Even if you're willing to say, oh, well, we have separate small groups. Okay, that's like a teensy bit better. Here's what I would do if I was in that situation. I would separate for the game, and I would separate for the message, and then I would just do combined worship. If I had to combine and be in the same building on the same night.
More just saying you have to share a building.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, all right, junior hires, you're going outside. We're going to play ultimate football. High schoolers, you're going to be in here and not play a game because you guys hate playing games. And we'll see.
Because like you're not quite sure, is it cool or not? And I don't want to make
you don't want to look
the
like
wrong
a
decision,
doofus.
so I won't do anything.
Right.
But I'll say everything's not cool. Sorry.
And then we'll do boring high school worship because they won't do junior high worship.
Boring high school worship.
I'm just
AKA
kidding.
no hand motions.
I like to dance. I do. I like to dance for worship. I'm just kidding. High school worship's awesome. Okay, so that sounds a little better to me, but then having the problem will be having like a cohesive like culture, like what's your ministry identity? Like that'll be really hard because it's like you said, we're basically just sharing a building. But I would rather do that. I just think 100% together, 100% of the time.
But that's also, you're saying you have to have another
person
person to do the game, another person do the message, another person, all that requires. So it's like at that point, just do a different night,
right. But see, here's what I'm thinking their pushback is going to be. I can't be gone another night of the week. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that would be,
that's understandable.
It is. But then I would find, well, then what do I need to give up?
Right.
Like maybe I can't attend my own Bible study and I only go to church for a season. Like, I don't know. Just, I'm telling you of how much I value this, that it would never, ever come to that for me, and some reasons why and some solutions. But and I don't want you to hear me say, if you're doing it this way, you're bad at your job. I do not think that. I just think
you're saying you're handicapping yourself.
Yes.
Essentially. It's not that you're doing ministry badly, but you're hurting your chances.
You're
of
making
growing.
It harder for yourself.
Right. Or in your church.
And and future generations. When I first took over the junior high ministry at our campus, it was 11 kids, and that was big enough to have just a junior high person, and I understand my church is different than your church and your pastor might not be willing to do something like that. But I think if we can start to, like, there's this saying of how to lead when you're not in charge. I feel like sometimes youth pastors need to push a little bit on their senior pastor for understanding the value of investing financially in student ministries. I just see more and more churches of like the senior pastor thinks it's babysitting and they put dollars toward other things, not realizing you're not going to have a congregation, and these people, like, they're going to run out.
Right. We did a whole episode on the dying church.
Yes.
So if you guys want to check that out, it'll be in the show notes below. But yeah, it's like you've got to continually be replenishing your congregation and that comes from the youth.
Right.
Because otherwise they eventually die and you have nobody.
And then the youth, those are the ones who end up being leaders and serving and like keep the church young and fresh and growing. And then they have families and they stay at the church. Like they want to raise their kids there. Like your dollars should go toward children and youth ministry and staffing it correctly. I don't know how much influence you have with your senior pastor, but maybe that's where this conversation needs to go.
Right. Because there's a lot of parents out there that are probably trying to coax their kids. Hey, let's go to church this Sunday. I don't want to go. I don't like it. Our youngest daughter the other day, she said her top 3 places are home, Disneyland, and church.
Aww.
And not necessarily in that order.
You didn't tell me that. That's funny.
And so it was like when you provide that, like she prays every night that to be able to go to church, which I don't really understand what she means, but I think she's just saying she can't wait to go.
Probably.
But it's like if you provide that atmosphere where it's like, I love going there. that means the parents love going there because that's like, hey, if our kids are all willing to go, let's all go.
And
as a
parents will
family.
put up with bad teaching or okay teaching in their own service.
Tell your senior pastor that.
Hey, you don't even have to be that good of a teacher. Parents are going to come.
So it's okay that you're not good.
That's what I'm saying. It's okay. But yeah, they will. If their kids love church, that's where parents will want to go. And you could bring that up to your senior pastor as well.
Free babysitting at that point.
Ooh, that's a hot button for our children's
tell
worker.
That to the children's workers.
They're like, don't call it childcare. It's not childcare. They get very upset.
Bottom line is, make sure you guys make that split sooner than later. No, but like you're saying before too, don't judge somebody else's middle to your beginning. And you have to see that long game version of, we're going to start now for what we want in 3, 5, 10 years from now. And be so glad that you did. If you were to look at your neighbor's house and be like, it's gorgeous, and you look at your dirt lot and it's like, well, then forget it. Well, no, you have to pour the foundation, and then you have to put up framing and plumbing or whatever the order of things go. But if you were just to be like, forget it, look how big theirs are, we're not going to be able to do that, so we're just going to sit in a dirt lot. It's like, that's silliness.
Silly gooses. Get your build on.
You have to put in the work and build that for future generations. No, for your future self.
For the children and their children and their children.
All right, we hit rock bottom.
And their children.
We're not going to do a question of the day, but we will do a community comment of the day. This is from Steven Schufelt, who says, thank you all for putting all the work into these videos. They have been super helpful with youth ministry. Well, thank you, Steven.
Schufelt. I like that.
I knew you would. Hey guys, if you did get value out of this episode, make sure you hit like and subscribe. And if you're listening on a podcast, make sure you leave a review there. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.